huge thanks to you all for participating today, but also for our speakers that we've got here today to tackle really how to just get on with it and talk to suppliers about climate change. I think we will be discussing Scope 3 and the challenges and the data questions. It's been a question in almost every session. The Scope 3 chapter will cover that for more and more and more. But what we wanted to do today was really focus on the tools and how you can just get on with it and get started, which is what I'm delighted to be joined by this wonderful panel here. So I think we should start with our Scope 3 chapter co-chairs. So Claudia, would you mind introducing yourself first?
Yep. Hi guys, my name is Claudia Steyler. I am one of the co-chairs of the Scope 3 chapter. So as Oliver explained, there's different chapters. We are heading the Scope 3 chapter. So we are coming together with a group of people discussing challenges that we experience in Scope 3. And we're going to organize a couple of sessions around metrics and targets, around supplier collaboration, really diving into the detail and discussing with people sort of what are the challenges, what can we learn from each other, and we really want to bring together a group of people that are all in this and that really want to and need to learn from each other. And I'm doing that together with Eric. Eric?
You're on mute, Eric.
Yeah.
I was on mute. Looks like it's better now. Hi, everyone. Hope you are all going well. Very happy to be in this session today with about 300 people, which is quite impressive. So my name is Eric Danjou. I'm a procurement practitioner, having about 25 years background in the industry, including a good 20 years in procurement. And I'm working for a company named Kinetic Consulting, a strategy consulting group where we are developing strategies and delivering practical implementation with clients. So in that respect, together with Claudia, we have started to focus on Scope 3 emissions, with one target to be a source of inspiration to everyone interested in the topic, and to be able, as Claudia said, to share nice stories, case studies, tools, methodologies that could inspire everyone within the procurement community. So in case you're interested to join us, feel free to connect with one of us. You will be warmly welcome in the journey.
Yeah, we're targeting to maybe meet once a month. So we have a schedule of topics that we want to discuss, and we want to meet once a month with the Scope 3 community. So everybody's definitely welcome to join those sessions.
Yeah. I think if we said now, put your questions about Scope 3 in the chat, we'd end up with 1,000 questions and nowhere near enough time to cover them all. So the purpose of the Scope 3 chapter is literally to take all of your questions and try and tackle them over however long it's going to take. So as I said, we will definitely not cover all here. So the SPP Scope 3 chapter is vital to that. Josh, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks very much, Oliver. Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to see you all here today. I'll just start by congratulating Oliver and the WSPD team for their absolute marathon event today. It's fantastic to be invited to be part of it. My name's Josh. I'm an associate with the Chancery Lane Project. I previously trained as a commercial solicitor in London and spent some time in-house at an oil and gas major before finding a role with the Chancery Lane Project. We're a non-profit organisation of ex-lawyers, ex-accountants, professional services people. And our vision is basically a world where every contract provides solutions to climate change rather than adding to the problem. But I'll tell you more about that later. Supply chain and procurement is a big part of what we do at TCLP, and I believe 7 of our 10 most popular contract clauses this year so far have been supply chain related, so it's clearly a key focus for the legal sector and the various other industries that we work with. And I'll hand back to Oliver now, or perhaps Julia.
Yeah, over to you, Julia.
Right, well, thanks Oliver and Claudia and Eric for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. So I am Giulio. I work with BSR, and I am a director in the climate team. I oversee most of our work on climate and supply chain, and I'm very pleased to be here. I think the topic is spot on, and very, very pleased to be with you all.
Exactly. So Scope 3 is a massive issue. It is officially 312 people, the most popular session of the day, more important than the CPO panel. So that says it all, doesn't it? I think it's very interesting. It is a huge topic. We could tackle so much. And I think it's safe to say that some of the work that Julia and the team have been working on, indeed Josh and the Chancery Lane Project, has been some of the most popular stuff that has been shared over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. So we really wanted to focus this session on the elephant in the room, which is what can I use now to get on and take action on climate change with suppliers. So delighted to be joined by you guys here today. So perhaps, Julio, we could start with you to give a bit of a perspective on your tools and what you've been sharing and what you've been working on with your colleagues, and we can dive into that.
Absolutely. I'll do that, and I'll try to share my screen to do that. Meanwhile, I'll also say you are absolutely right, Oliver. If we asked what the issues are with Scope 3, we'll get 1,000 questions. I will not try to get 1,000 answers today, but I will try to focus on what to really just focus on a few tools and see what they are. So can I just ask you, Oliver, to confirm to me that
you look great.
Full screen?
Yeah, all good.
Very good. Very good. So with that in mind, I already introduced myself. I'll spend really 20 seconds to present BSR as well, for those of you who do not know us. We are a non-profit business network of sustainability experts present worldwide in Asia, Europe, and North America. We focus on climate, among other issues as well, and we are a membership-based organization. So we work with over 300 companies worldwide, 180 people across the globe, focusing on providing insights, advice, and working collaboratively across value chains, but also across issues. And climate is a good example of that, because it is true that there's no answering, there's no solution to the supply chain, the Scope 3 issue, without working together and collaborating. And so with that in mind, what Oliver, Claudia, and Eric asked me to do today is to present a few freely available tools that BSR co-developed in 2021 together with other organizations, with companies, with input from experts. Oliver was a part of that as well in many cases. And so those tools are freely available today, and we believe they can be of value for many companies that do approach how do I engage suppliers on climate in different aspects. And so today we'll talk about three things. First, I'll talk about something called the 1.5 Supplier Engagement Guide, which is a framework for 1.5 aligned supplier engagement. That's what you see on the left side of the slide, and it's also available at the link that you see in the bottom of the slide. We'll share the slide after so you can access them. After we talk about the framework, we'll look at something called the Transformation Guides, which is a set of several how-to guides on implementing net zero value chains. And there's one specifically, which we talk about today, which is the first one that we did in an initiative called Transform to Net Zero, and that focuses on Scope 3 emission and supplier engagement. So there's some learnings there. The third one is a bit different, and it's part of an initiative called the SME Climate Hub. It is in the context of this initiative, which focuses on SMEs and how they can reach net zero and providing tools to them, we worked on providing an online training on net zero dedicated to SMEs, which is called ClimateFit. And we'll talk about that in a second, why it is relevant. If I assume that many of you on the line are multinational companies with large supply chains, SMEs are definitely a part of your supply chain as well. And yes, thanks for SMEs are indeed small and medium enterprises. And so they are part of the long tail of suppliers in most companies' supply chains. And so it's important that we support and address all types of suppliers while we strive to achieve our Scope 3 goals. But I'll go in order. I'll start with the framework, which is developed. I think I'll provide a quick context as well. It is developed in the context of an initiative called 1.5 Supply Chain Leaders, which is an initiative created a year and a half ago with the goal of driving climate action through global supply chains. It's a wide partnership, as you can see here. Exponential Roadmap is the organization that works as secretariat for that. There's corporate participation by the companies you see on the top of this slide, and then support by a wide set of stakeholders, from the Women Business Coalition to the UN Race to Zero, to the International Chamber of Commerce. The purpose of the initiative is really to work together to reduce emissions across the value chain through collaboration and by supporting suppliers to achieve climate targets. What do we mean by climate targets here? We mean halving emissions before 2030 and achieving net zero emissions before 2050. So the companies that are part of this commit to, already have 1.5 commitment for the value chains. They commit to support suppliers, SMEs and not, and they recognize the importance of working together and collaboration in that front. Why am I talking to you about that? It is because BSR, together with the Climate Group, are part of supporting organizations to the initiative. And so last year, we led, together with some companies, the development of one project in the initiative, which is the 1.5 Supplier Engagement Guide. But what is it? So for those of you who will click on the link, you will see something nicer that looks like what you have on the slide here. It is an open framework that it is developed collaboratively, and it is meant for an audience of procurement professionals that can use it to engage suppliers so that they work with them to halve emission before 2030. As I said, it was launched by the 1.5 supply chain leaders at COP. And what you will see on the open source framework is really a couple of things. What you have in the circle here on the slide is the entry point within the guide, which is the why, what, and how this is important. I will not spend much time on the why, because we know the importance of achieving climate targets. We know that business has a very important role to play, and we know also that climate action is good business, and companies do gain competitive advantage by working on it. In the what, you will see sort of an explanation that I just talked about what the guide is, and on the how, which is the text that you have on the center of the screen, we do talk a little bit about what the 1.5 Supplier Engagement Guide is and how it can be used. So I think the important thing to note is that the guide is structured in several blocks, which is actually the ones that you see in the bottom of the slide here. Foundation, procurement, supplier engagement, reporting, and collaboration and innovation. And each of those blocks has a set of 3 recommendations. Think of it as the TCFD of supplier engagement somehow, for those of you who are familiar with that. And so the primary audience of this are the procurement function and the sustainability teams within the organization that are starting to get a supplier engagement program going, or are in the process of implementing it and want to know what guidance and how others are approaching this and what can I do differently. So the idea is to provide a common framework that companies can then use, copy, paste, adapt as fitting, and use with their suppliers. So broadly speaking, the foundation piece that you see on the bottom left talks about the need to set an ambition that aligns your supply chain to 1.5, and also the importance of having a clear public target and get your leadership in the company and your CPO to communicate to the sales part of your supplier about your ambition. The second part, the procurement part, we'll get to that in just a second. But it looks like this. It talks about the expectation, what you can ask a supplier, what you can communicate to supplier that you expect. It looks about the type of tools that you can use for process integration, and the importance of aligning the sustainability and the procurement teams internally. And we'll get to that in just a second. But the supplier engagement part talks about the importance of supporting your suppliers and also recognizing performance. The reporting, I think, speaks for itself. And the collaboration and innovation is in recognition of the fact that regardless of what we do, supplier engagement is a part of the set of actions that we need to take to transform supply chains. So it's not only about engaging supplier, and it is a big task, but it's also about transforming your supply chain and making sure that your business model evolves to support your net zero goals as well. And you cannot do that alone. When you zoom in each of these 4 pillars, you will find for each of them the 3 recommendations. So for procurement, I put this as an example. You do have, and thanks Holly for posting that in the chat, you will see 3 recommendations: expectation, process integration, and internal alignment. I won't go through the details of all of them. I'll let you discover this. But what you will see in each of them is a why, a what, and a how. And I think what's interesting maybe to quickly look at is in the what, you will see the type of actions that you can take to make sure that 1.5 is integrated into your messaging. And the how is the levers that you can pull. So it is supply contracts, it is the supply code of conduct, the RFI and RFPs, the self-assessments. And importantly, on the right side, in each of these pillars, you will see examples of actions that we have collected and we are continuing to grow in 2022 about what current best practices look like. And so, for example, you have an example from British Telecom about the climate change standards and requirements they use, an example from Salesforce that has language that they've put into their supply contracts about addition of climate consideration. But actually they developed together with Josh and his team at the Chancery Lane project. And so we talk about the Chancery Lane as well there. And then we talk about supplier maturity mapping with examples from other companies. So the ambition really is that in time, we can get to something that companies can get inspiration from and copy and adapt, of course, because it's not only a copy paste to their specific company. I want to move us forward also in the interest of time. And Oliver, you please do feel free to let me know if I'm going too slow.
you're doing well.
But the second tool I wanted to talk about is those transformation guides that I mentioned, which are developed in the context of an initiative called Transform to Net Zero, which BSR is secretariat of. We launched this in 2020 with a group of companies that you see here on this slide, and HSBC joined in 2022 as well. It's a small group of companies from different sectors, each of them with robust and existing net zero goals for the value chains. And so the focus of the initiative is really to accelerate the transformation in their own business, but also to share the transformation journey and inspire other companies. And so in the context of that inspiration to other companies, that's where something like the transformation guides take part. I will not spend too much time on this, but the initiative has a vision as a specific goal, which you see in the center of the slide here. It is that by 2025, the largest 1,000 companies in the world have targets backed up by transformation plans to achieve net zero, no later than 2050. As you can see, it's quite ambitious and there's a lot to do to get there. But the transformation guide are a vehicle that we use to influence and to support other companies in their transformation. So what are they? It is, as I defined them before, a set of how-to guides in which companies from Transform to Net Zero share how they are approach a specific topic which is relevant in the implementation of their net zero goals. Today we'll focus on one, which is the buyer supplier engagement to reduce Scope 3 emission guide, which we launched in September last year. We launched a second one on net zero goal setting at COP26, and we are soon to launch a third one on innovating net zero products and services, which will be launched, I think, at the end of March. All of them are available for free at the address you see in the bottom of the slide here. The buyer supplier engagement guide, which was published in September, has a collection of 3 approaches that we found quite interesting from 3 companies, Microsoft, Unilever, and Nike. And what we try to do in the guide is we try to answer those 4 questions. I will not get, do not worry, I will not get to the full guide on the presentation today, but I think it's useful to set the stage. Those are some big questions in terms of Scope 3 engagement. And we're trying to see, to provide best practices and example from the specific companies to inspire others to do the same. Very quickly, the 3 examples, for example, Unilever has decided to approach this through the angle of the climate transition plan. So no surprise for most of you, at the beginning of a buyer-supplier engagement or the implementation of Scope 3 goal, there's a mapping. And so it's important for, I would argue, each company to map what the largest sources of greenhouse gas emission are in the value chain, then act on them. Unilever is a good example, I think, in this, because they do have quite a thorough mapping of through the life cycle of the materials that they produce and that they source, sorry. After the mapping, there's a segmentation and prioritization of suppliers, the idea of creating standards that are mandatory for supplier around specific areas that are GHG intensive. And then there's the establishment of the climate program, which is the supplier engagement program they launched last year, in which they prioritize 300 suppliers. I think that many of you will measure yourself in that. And the idea is that through that, they can get to act and support, importantly, those priority suppliers in the long term. The approach that Nike is using is a little bit different. So it is clear that for a company like Nike, a big part of the emissions are in the raw materials that they source, and it is on some key commodities. We talk about 3 main things. One is the existence of a supplier sustainability council. So the idea of that is that they have also mapped the supplier, and that they have selected, because of the size of the impact of some suppliers, they have created a small group, a core group, which meets regularly and to share learning and processes among themselves. And this is a positive loop because it allows different suppliers to compare approaches and potentially to work together. To ensure that the suppliers and Nike also work together to a specific approach, what they also did is to set up the so-called Supplier Climate Action Program, or SCAP. The idea in there is to go as far as developing a decarbonization target, which effectively is common and links one company, Nike, to their suppliers. And I think that's quite interesting. It's one of the first examples we saw of that. And it's something that certainly other companies can try and replicate if that works. And lastly, the Microsoft example is they've done a few interesting things. I'm sure that many of you might be familiar with the Microsoft approach, but one thing they did is to work on the supplier code of conduct. And so to require the supplier to disclose Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and also provide plans on how they're planning to achieve their climate goals. The other interesting thing that they did, so that is about setting expectations, really. The second part is about charging a fee on carbon emission. You might be aware that Microsoft has been charging an internal carbon price on their Scope 1 and 2 for some time. And most recently, they done the same for Scope 3. So we'll see what the results are, but it's certainly an interesting approach to keep in mind with other companies. And the last is partnering with financial institutions. So in their case, they partner with the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, to work with suppliers in emerging markets to provide better financing terms for those suppliers who have better sustainability credentials. And that is also a big field that many companies are looking into. I'll try to speed it up And in terms of the third tool I wanted to speak to is the ClimateFit SME training that I mentioned. This is in the context of the SME Climate Hub, which I very much won't spend time on, but encourage those of you who find it interesting to go and check online. It is a one-stop shop for small and medium enterprises that has a commitment recognized by the Race to Zero, a set of free tools, and then in time, there will be the opportunity to access incentives for those SMEs to take climate action. In that context, there are a set of publicly available tools that SMEs can use. We'll focus on ClimateFit, the one that you see on the left today, but there are others. A calculator, a set developed by Normative, and a financial support guide, which we also work on together with Cambridge Sustainability Leadership Institute. And ClimateFit is a free online training, which is in 7 modules, tailored to SMEs. And it is some sort of step-by-step guide. So the idea is that I'll go into what the modules are just in a second, but we try to bring the SMEs through the journey on setting net zero target and implementing them. It aims to be interactive and practical, and importantly, it is also free and open to all SMEs. If you go and check it out online, you will see a set of, you need to register, but it's really merely a registration in terms of company name, your name, the website, and your credentials, really. So it's 7 modules that focus on these topics: climate strategy and governance, operation, which is about climate action in scope 1 and 2, supply chain, which is about upstream scope 3 and reducing emissions in there, product design, which is about design for net zero. So how can I design more sustainable products, and what does it mean for my design and development process? Finance, which is about how do we finance the net zero transition, people and community. So what does climate really mean, and how do I engage my employees and the surrounding community? And then storytelling and communication, which is about telling and leveraging net zero in your net zero stories. I will quickly go through this, but you will see, I think the best thing is really to go and see for yourself, but every course starts with introducing the topic and the key issues. So for example, in operations, we talk about what is energy efficiency, how do we define renewable energy, fleet emission, business travel policy, and so on. What you see on the right part of the slide is when you enter each of the module, you do have different classes or different pieces that you can take. You do not have to take it all at the same time, but each SME can go in whenever they wish and complete the module, take a part of the module, which we find is quite helpful, especially knowing how busy everybody is right now. We really try to put interactive elements such as graphics, flashcards, drop-downs, and quizzes at the center of it to make it as engaging as possible and not a passive learning only. And there is this possibility of looking at case studies from companies large, like Walmart, and small, like other SMEs, that can inspire SMEs to action. And at the end of the modules, there's some action checklist that the learner can really take and bring with them as a PDF to start taking action internally with their company. And so with that, I think I will stop talking and send it back to you, Oliver, for the next steps.
Awesome. I think that's fantastic. I can tell what everyone's thinking. They're thinking, can I get these slides? That's what they're thinking, because this is literally it is a literal toolkit with links and everything else. And all those tools are freely available. And I, as I said, have been involved working with BSR and others on those tools. And I can assure people they are absolutely excellent and well put together by people who really know what they're talking about. So I'm delighted to have so many of that shared. So Julia, I'm sure you'll be able to share the slides. Is that right?
I will be able to, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So we'll make sure everyone gets the slides and you will get that toolkit and be able to click on stuff and see the letter that Ericsson sent to their suppliers asking them about climate change action. So there's some really, really practical stuff. But wanted to follow up, Julia, and we will come to questions. So please do keep putting the questions in. I've got a whole list of questions to come to, and it's actually seeing the power of the crowd and people answering questions in there. I saw James O'Neill Procurement doing a great job there of answering questions. Keep that up, James, and please keep that going. Makes the life even easier. But there is a tool that has really also taken the imagination of procurement professionals. So, Josh, over to you.
Thanks very much, Oliver, and thanks, Julia. That's fantastic to hear about. I'll just attempt to share my screen.
Yep.
Hopefully that works. Brilliant. Can you see my slides there?
We can, yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks. So, hi, everyone. It's great to have some time to speak with you today. Thanks, Oliver. As I mentioned earlier, my name's Josh. I'm an associate with the Chancery Lane Project, and I've got a background in commercial law. I'm here to introduce you to our powerful, practical, free tools that can help each of you to get on with reducing your Scope 3 emissions. So the Chancery Lane Project, or TCLP for short, is a non-profit, philanthropically funded organisation. Some of you might have met us before through the SPP. As you all know, legal contracts govern the way business is done. Right now, all of the organisations here in this room and your supply chains will be bound by certain obligations under certain contracts, and performance of those obligations will likely be producing greenhouse gas emissions in one way or another. At TCLP, our aim is to rewire those contracts so that they actually reduce the emissions produced by your business. To achieve this, our community of over 2,300 lawyers and industry experts have donated a whole lot of their time to draft ambitious template contract clauses that still perform commercially, but which also deliver on your climate goals. And we can all imagine what the invoice for those thousands of lawyer hours would add up to, but their output is free for you to take from our website, adapt and start using in your contracts today with no commitment wall or registration required. We currently have 104 of these model contract clauses up on the website, along with an extensive glossary of climate-related terms and the Net Zero Toolkit, videos, explained documents, that sort of thing, to educate and upskill your staff. Now, the first question you might ask is, why do we use contracts to fight climate change? The best solution to a lot of climate issues is, of course, legislation. But at TCLP, we take the view that legislation, though it's powerful in the long run, is a little bit too slow to adapt to meet ambitious net zero targets quickly enough to avoid the fairly bleak future laid out in the IPCC report. Contracts, on the other hand, are bespoke and comparatively nimble documents which can be changed quickly, implemented quickly, and enforced using the normal means of contractual enforcement that the parties are used to. All of the mechanisms that you use today to ensure your contracts deliver the right pricing, the right specification, and things like that, those mechanisms can actually be tweaked and repurposed to also deliver on your ambitious Scope 3 emissions targets. So to help you identify and reduce your Scope 3 emissions, we've got 25 supply chain specific clauses published free for everyone on our website. These include due diligence questionnaires, board papers, and heads of terms to help frame your decision making. There's some recitals, scorecards, and schedules to add onto your commercial agreements. And there's offset termination and target cascade mechanisms to incentivize the parties and to enforce those obligations where necessary. Now, these are tangible steps you can adapt to suit your business and start using right now, much like Julia's toolkit that he just described for us. They're not just another policy document or a long-term target that you can sign up to. They're an immediate way to show your climate commitments to your stakeholders in black and white and to help secure green finance if that's relevant to you. They're also one way to avoid becoming a target of future litigation, which, as we've seen in recent days with the Shell shareholder situation, is being aimed at an increasingly wide net of companies and individuals who could be seen to facilitate carbon-intensive business. I thought I'd spotlight one example of our materials, which are all free, as I say, on our website, that's relevant to you today. Due diligence questionnaires will be familiar to many of you, and this one can be integrated into your existing procurement processes with no material cost or liability. It can really help customers manage their Scope 3 emissions and to build stronger supplier relationships at the same time. Now, I'd like to point out at this point that all of our TCLP clauses do have an alternative title alongside their sort of formal legal titles explaining what they do in the contract. They're also named after a child in the life of the lawyers who drafted the clause, because by using these contracts in your day-to-day business, you're actually thinking of the next generation. So looking at Raphael's procurement due diligence questionnaire, it's a set of 33 questions that ask potential suppliers for information about a wide range of climate change related issues, going far beyond the standard inquiries that you might be used to. Customer procurement teams can appraise supplier approaches to climate related risks and impacts, and how well these align with the customer's own climate strategy and targets. The questionnaire increases transparency between the parties and helps to cascade the achievement of a customer's net zero targets to their suppliers. This should enable customers to identify their Scope 3 emissions so they can plan appropriate measures to reduce them. This is just one example of our supply chain clauses, which are actually being used today in real-world contracts by quite a few different businesses, including Vodafone, the UK Environment Agency, Salesforce, a multinational steel manufacturer, and a major UK bank, just to name a few. We publish case studies about these market leaders on our website with tips for those looking to follow their example. So please do have a read if you'd like to learn from their experiences. And we'd love to see you start using this opportunity to deliver impact on World Sustainable Procurement Day. You can sign up to our newsletter and attend our TCLP events, attended by a network of like-minded cross-sector professionals who are all in the same boat as you and just trying to learn from each other about implementing these contract clauses in their contracts. You can tell your legal teams and your contract managers about us, ask them to review our free resources to find relevant quick win clauses for your contracts. For guidance, we run a lot of free workshops and clinics that any staff who deal with contracts can come to and upskill on how to contract with the climate and use these tools in your day-to-day. Most importantly, you can use our clauses. You can add questions from our climate due diligence questionnaire to your tender process. You can review our climate board paper before signing your next big supply contract, or you can benchmark the party's performance using our supplier emissions scorecard. As I mentioned, these are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the resources available to you for free on our website. Then, once you've had a go at it, you can let us write a case study about you to set an example for others in your sector. That's it from me. It's a whistle-stop tour of who we are, what we do, and the tools available to you. If you do use our clauses, then please let us know and let Ollie and the Sustainable Procurement Day team know, because we'd love to hear your Scope 3 success stories. And thanks very much for listening.
Awesome, thank you. See, this is what can happen if thousands of lawyers and thousands of procurement professionals get together. It's very exciting indeed. So just to recap, I mean, it is literally free contract clauses to cut and paste and use in contract clauses. As I said, it's an absolutely extraordinary tool that's been developed, and can't recommend it enough. So do check the link there for those tools. As I said, I think a combination of what Julio shared and what you, Josh, has shared has given people who are in procurement who like practical stuff to be able to go and do, literally very few excuses left to go and do it. So conscious of time, we've got quite a few questions. So I do want to leave a little bit of time at the end to make sure the Scope 3 chapter at the SPP gets a chance to share what it's got planned. So we're just going to rattle through these. Robert Ingham asks, in terms of the 1.5 degree supplier engagement guide, do you need to sign up to the 1.5 degree supply chain leaders to access it? I don't think that's true, Julio, but they are accepting members as well?
So you do not have to sign up. The idea is to prepare the tool and that to make it available to everybody. So you don't have to sign up. This said, I know they are looking to expand the membership. So if that is of interest, I'm happy to put you in touch and explore it from there.
Excellent. I'm going to come on to Chantal. Hi, Chantal. I hope you're well. You're asking about whether there's any examples of sustainable procurement policies available, particularly for real estate. Don't know if anyone on this panel has got an answer to that, but certainly we're talking as the SPP to Jones Lang LaSalle to really talk to their team to find out what tools they're using. So hopefully we can access that. Anyone got any real estate experience of sustainable procurement practices on the panel?
We have some real estate and construction procurement clauses on the website and questionnaires. I'll find those now and drop them in the chat.
Brilliant, Josh, brilliant. Asking about what Microsoft does with the funds. Very good question. There's some news out this week from Microsoft about what they're doing on internal carbon pricing associated with Scope 3. We're hoping to get Microsoft on at some point to talk about what they're practically doing. Perhaps Julia can help us with that. We're very keen to do that. So perhaps we can get them to answer that. There was another question about formats for collecting data. So again, I know that there's been some questions answered on here, and really about how do we go about collecting data in a sensible way. And again, a big challenge I know I think is going to be covered by the Scope 3 chapter. So I'll perhaps come on to that final question as well. Just a couple of other recommendations in terms of tools as well. If I put it into the chat, but if you Google the UN Global Compact, UNGC, they're running a phenomenal category-specific series of webinars about Scope 3 at the moment. So Google that, UNGC Scope 3 webinars, you'll find it. It's a fantastic resource. I think they've just had one. The next one's coming soon. I chair the Scope 3 peer group, which is really for sustainability professionals to get their heads around Scope 3. So again, I'm always available. And Grant wanted to really help point people in the right direction on that. But yeah, Stephanie, any other questions that I've missed? Otherwise, actually, I'll have a little look. And while I'm doing that, perhaps Eric, you can give us a bit of an update on what the Scope 3 chapter for the SPP's got planned.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Oliver. So let me share my screen first. And let's go back to school for a few seconds, just to share with you the complexity of this chapter and the challenge that Claudia and myself are trying to face in a very positive and in a very good way. So as you probably know, the GHG protocol tells us that the Scope 3 scope is pretty broad, not only looking at the upstream, but looking at the downstream activities. So we have a bunch of information to collect, of knowledge to gather in order to be able to address the upstream and the downstream activities. So in order to do so, Claudia and myself have decided to run some type of project and to be a bit disciplined in the way we wanted to manage Scope 3 with everyone volunteering to do so. And this is why we have set up a type of project charter where we have very clear scope and objectives. So our scope is clearly on the Scope 3 emissions, as I mentioned, upstream, downstream. And the target is pretty clear, meaning that we want to build an active community of procurement experts being able to share whatever needs to be shared and whatever someone could learn from others. Ideally, would like to give access to a type of catalog of Scope 3 capabilities, practices, and why not, if we are extremely ambitious, to be able to leverage industry standards. So we have gathered a team of enablers that are working with us, with some ambassadors in the countries, with a core team of experts. And we have a governance where we have different type of teams. First of all, Claudia and myself who are co-chairing, but who are gathering as well core team of subject matter experts and ambassadors. And our success is very easy to understand. We will be happy when we see that we are a source of inspiration and we are able to provide some knowledge and some expertise. We'll be happy when we have a toolbox available where we can provide benchmark as well, and when we can be a source of inspiration as well in terms of standards. So as Claudia mentioned at the beginning, we have a clear plan in place as well with some milestones. And we're going to try to have some regular meetings with the Scope 3 community and beyond the Scope 3 community in order to share what we have learned, what we have gathered, and for sure to collect what others can bring to the community. Let me pass the ball to Claudia. She will go into more details on what type of topic we're going to focus on starting from now.
Definitely. Is that the next slide on this pack, Eric? Oh, you want me to share? Okay.
No, yeah, I want you to share, Claudia.
Yep, I'm gonna do it. All right, can you see my screen?
We can.
Great. So as Eric was saying, we started to put together this group of people, and we thought it would be a good idea to structure it a little bit around topics that are important to all of us. So we ran a little survey in December, and out of that survey, we deducted 4 topics. The first one being metrics and targets. The second one being tools and methodologies. The third one being supplier engagement. And the fourth one being internal engagement, so stakeholder engagement. So currently we are running 4 groups that are going to set up or that are in the process of setting up a session on each of these topics. So we thought it would be good to do like a deep dive session, first of all, on metrics and targets. So we will look at, what kind of targets do organizations set on scope 3? How do they then pass them on to the suppliers? What kind of metrics are they using to actually measure against those targets? The second session will be about the tools and methodologies. So what kind of methodologies and tools are people using to actually measure their scope 3? The third one is going to be supplier engagement. So how are people actually engaging with suppliers? What kind of tools are they doing? Are they using for that? And then the fourth one being internal engagement. So how are you actually making sure that you get people on board of all the activities and all the projects that are being run in the organization with regard to scope 3? So the objective of running these sort of 4 topics is that we want to focus the session, that we want to make sure that there's something interesting for everybody who joins every month. And that we have like a structure that, it's clear to people what it is that they're joining. So we haven't started organizing these sessions yet. Well, we started organizing them, but we haven't held them yet. So anyone on this call who would be interested to join the Scope 3 chapter is more than welcome to join us. So you can find us through the SPP website. If you log into the website, then somewhere at the left bottom, you see all the chapters that are being run in the SPP. And if you click on the Scope 3 chapter, you get into a little database of people that are interested in Scope 3. Alternatively, you can send me a message. My email address is cstijlen@hikma.com, or Eric, whose email address is e.danjou@kineticconsulting.com. And then we'll link you up into the Scope 3 chapter. Maybe I see there's like 5 minutes left. So we just pause to see if there's any questions, Oliver?
Yeah. No, I think Hannah had a hand up, didn't you, Hannah, if you're still there? I can hear.
Sorry, I can't unmute myself.
Yay.
No, it was just a comment to say that those resources. I think people knowing where to look for those open source resources has been absolutely invaluable today. Is that something that the Sustainable Procurement Pledge is going to have, like a resource library links to, just like building on it, because it's been absolutely invaluable today, to be honest.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, Hannah. That's very kind of you to say. Yes, in the short term, we're going to bombard you with information, slides, links, in a fairly structured way. In the long term, we will try to aim for the Scope 3 chapter to have literally a toolkit of links and things that's very well organised. And so bear with us. We've got loads of stuff to give you. We just need to find out the best way to give it to you. But yes, all of that is going to be available, and we're going to try and make it as simple and clear as possible. But very kind words. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's been really good.
Good. Great to hear. We are short on time, mainly because there is another session starting very shortly, and I haven't been to the toilet all day. So I am going to go to the toilet, which I'm sure you all want to know. But thank you so much to Julio, Josh. Awesome tools, genuinely brilliant tools, and really, really practical for procurement. We have a million questions. I've not seen so many questions being answered by other participants in any of the other sessions in the last however many hours it's been now that we've been doing this. So this is genuinely a Scope 3 community. Not many people know what they're doing on Scope 3, and there's plenty to learn. So awesome to see so many people in there. James, great. Thanks for putting your insight. We need to get you into the Scope 3 chapter, definitely. Eric, Claudia, thank you so much for putting this all together. You're doing an amazing job with probably the most popular chapter. So thank you so much.
You can always use some more members, Oliver.
You're going to get them, that's for sure.
I'm sure.
So please do get in touch. There's plenty of people here. Otherwise, I'm going to go and have a cup of tea. Yeah, I'll see you all on the other side. But thank you again, team, for taking part.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.